موشک بالستیک سوخت جامد قاسم بصیر. جدیدترین ارتقا که اکنون در تمامی شهرهای موشکی این ارتقا انجام شده. آخرین تست عملیاتی این موشک 28 فروردین ماه امسال بوده.
از نظر بالک هم تغییراتی معلوم ایجاد شده در ساختار خود موشک.
ما هم در بحث هدایت هم در بحث مانور، یعنی
All right, Shalom. I want to start out by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak Wadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the Art of the Glory Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today is Monday, May 26, 2025, Missile Monday. And I have this article from Newsweek. And it says, Iran threatens to strike on Israel as U.S. talks hang in balance. So I'm just going to go into this article a little bit and then read a few scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. Excuse me, Slakia. And it says, Major General Abdolrahman Musavi, Commander-in-Chief of Iran's army, said on Monday that Tehran is fully ready for another aerial strike, calling it a justified response to perceived Israeli aggression. He used the code name True Promise to describe Iran's direct attacks, echoing terminology previously employed during prior strikes. The warning came just as U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem visited Israel to brief Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the status of U.S.-Iran nuclear talks. It says Newsweek has reached out the State Department as well as the foreign ministries of Iran and Israel for comment. It says why it matters. The threat of a third Iranian strike on Israel marks the potential for a significant escalation in a border regional conflict involving Iranian-aligned groups in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen amid Israel's war on Gaza following Hamas's October 7, 2023 attacks. Mousavi's remarks reflect mounting pressure on Iran's leadership to respond forcefully to Israel's military operations and Western sanctions. The warning also comes as the U.S. continues to support Israel while maintaining negotiations with Iran over its nuclear program. The situation underscores the delicate balance between diplomacy and deterrence. It says what to know. Mousavi's warning follows what he described as rhetoric from Israeli leaders. He said their threats are meaningless and they claim they lack the capacity to harm the greatness of Iran. He vowed that any escalation will bring extraordinary challenges to Israel and its allies. Two previous operations, dubbed True Promise, involved mass missile and drone attacks. The first, on April 13th, 2024, saw over 300 projectiles fired at Israeli military installations following the killing of 2 Iranian generals in Damascus. A second attack on October 1st last year launched roughly 200 missiles in response to assassinations of militant leaders tied to Hezbollah and Hamas. And yeah, just, pretty much things are still heating up between Iran and, the small hats over there, man. And again, I know I'm not going to read the whole article, but I am going to leave this, in the description box, for brothers to check out themselves, But again, what does it say in the scriptures? That the least of the flock shall draw them out, right? And I'll start with that, because again, we have to keep our eyes on that region, because what these small hats are doing, or these small hats are going to ultimately cause, Russia and America to step in on behalf, because again, Iran, is allies with Russia. And just like it says, the U.S. is allies with Israel, So again, both of these major countries are going to back their allies, which ultimately, the small hats are going to draw, these primary two nations into World War III, So I'm going to get the book of Jeremiah, chapter 49 and verse 20. It says, "Therefore hear the counsel of the Lord, that he hath taken against Edom, and his purposes that he hath purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them." And again, man, Amalek, over there in the land, they're ultimately going to cause World War III. We don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but again, they're the least of the flock, man, because again, they're one of the 10 nuclear armed nations, man, So Israel has missiles, but what primary two nations have the most missiles or warheads? Russia and the United States. And then between the two, Russia has more missiles than America, And that's the one thing we have to remember, that this is heating up. It's a Cold War now, but it's eventually going to build up, or is building up to, that hot war, which once this happens, that's it. It's going to be the end all be all, man, because this is not going to be a traditional war either. So there's the book of Isaiah, chapter 9 and verse 5. And it says, "For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise, and garments rolled in blood, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire." And again, this isn't going to be a traditional war like, ancient combat used to be, hand-to-hand combat, guerrilla warfare. You have men on one side of the battlefield, men on the other side of the battlefield, charging each other in the center, with weapons of war, swords, spears, shields, things of that sort, ultimately to, just hand-to-hand combat is what I'm trying to say, but this war isn't going to be, like that, man. It's like it says, it's going to be with burning and fuel of fire, meaning this war is primarily going to be fought with these nuclear missiles, And I always have to make mention that, again, in the midst of World War III, you will have ground troops that are going to be going to war with each other, But again, this war is primarily going to be fought with these nukes, So now I'm going to jump to Isaiah chapter 54 and verse 16. And it says, "Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals and the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy." And again, these modern day smiths, would be these scientists and physicists that are behind creating these nuclear missiles. Because what does a blacksmith do? They create weapons of war. And what are these scientists and physicists doing? They're creating weapons of war, but not only weapons of war, weapons of mass destruction. This is what they're doing, And it says the wasted to destroy. The wasted to destroy are the missiles themselves, in particular the warhead, man. Because that's the part of the missile that does the damage, the warhead, And again, these wars are ultimately going to build up, or these small wars are ultimately going to build up to World War III. Because the end all be all is going to be America, aka Babylon the Great, being destroyed. Which you want to grab that in the book of Isaiah, chapter 13, and verse 4. And it says, the noise of a multitude in the nations, the noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven. Even the Lord and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. And right, man, just like it says, these missiles are going to be shot from one end of the earth and land in the other, because again, this is what the Lord is doing, man. He's stirring these nations up, ultimately to judge them, because again, just like it says, America is going to be destroyed. The whole land is going to be destroyed, And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This place is prophesied to be destroyed by way of fire, So I'm going to get the book of Joel, chapter 3, and verse 9. And it says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up, beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. And indeed, this is what these other nations are doing, man. They're exhausting their resources into, their military to up their arsenal, man. Especially when it comes to these nuclear missiles, because again, Iran, they're now a nuclear armed nation because they're word 9. Now Iran is that 10th nuclear armed nation, And again, as I've mentioned before, Russia and America are the top 2 nations that have the most missiles. Why? Because Russia and America are going to go to war with each other, Excuse me, Slovakia. And Russia, starting with Russia, along with the help from, North Korea, China, these different nations that are against America are going to, aid in that destruction. Also, America's allies are going to turn on this place, just like it says in Revelation 17, these shall hate the whore, and burn her with fire. This is what these nations are going to do. They're going to shoot their missiles over here, So I'm just going to grab a couple more and that'll be it. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 7, and verse 1. And it says, and after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. These are 4 literal angels holding back the 4 winds, which the 4 winds represent the destruction, because there is an appointed time when this destruction is going to take place, Verse 2, and I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living power, and he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our power in their foreheads. And right, man, ultimately we know until the elect are sealed, until all hell breaks loose, Jacob's trouble, is taking place. The mark of the beast, Revelation 13 and verse 16 down to 18 is, come to pass. That is when, this destruction is going to take place, you know. So I'm going to end it with the book of Revelation, chapter 9 and verse 15. And it says, "And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men." And right, man, there's a particular hour, day, month, and year when this war is going to take place, when Babylon the Great is going to be destroyed. Because just like it says in the book of Matthew, you know, no man knows the day nor hour, you know, when our Lord is going to come back. Because this day is synonymous with the second coming of our Lord, man. Because the Lord Yahushua is going to come back in the midst of World War III, you know. So nobody knows the day or hour when he's going to come back, you know. But understand, we know that that day is coming. The day of the Lord, you know, is coming, you know. And it says to slay the third part of men, because you have three classes of men that are on the earth today, you know. You have the sons of God, which today would be the biblical Israelites, you know, all 12 tribes from Judah all the way down to Issachar. And you have the sons of men, which would be, you know, the heathen nations. And you have the sons of the wicked, which would be, you know, the Edomites, you know, which they are the wicked, and they are the third part of men. That's who this destruction is for. The nation of Edom, you know, is primarily for them. But you will have 2/3 of our people that are going to get caught up in this destruction for their wickedness. And, you know, whatever heathens are over here, you know, they're just over here to make their little money and be destroyed, you know. They're just collateral damage, you know. But ultimately, this is the time that we're in, man. We're still in the time of war, you know, and things are just going to heat up more and more until that great day, you know. So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I like to give double honors unto the apostles and the artists of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till next time,